This is One-on-One. Dr. Yvette Wan, Assistant Professor of Informatics and Director of the Social Interaction Lab, NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. By the way, describe that title. The Social Interaction Lab is?
Social Interaction Lab is myself and a collection of students, and we do research related to human-computer interaction, which is looking at how people interact with all sorts of different kinds of technologies that are social. So that includes social media, online games, live streaming, so a lot of fun research going on.
You know what's so interesting? I was saying this to you before we get on the air. By the way, there are thousands of people here at this Voice Summit at NJIT. Who've come here for a lot of different reasons, but I bet there's some folks watching right now, Professor, who say, oh, voice technology, less human interaction, more technological control, you say?
Well, I say that, of course, there could be some doomsday scenario where voice completely takes over, but I don't really see it that way. I see it more of as a complement to human interaction. And there are a lot of situations where, for example, when you're seeking information or something like that, where it would be nice to have someone always available all the time. And the thing with people is that it's very hard to do that. And so one example is, for example, let's say you're a very elderly person at home and you need to reach out to someone right away and someone is not readily available. In that case, you might want to talk to a conversational agent that may be able to assist you for something.
Back up. A conversational agent. Define that.
Conversational agent is basically a machine that you can have a conversation with.
How does that work? Do you ask questions?
Well, it can happen in a lot of different ways. Sometimes you can ask questions and it can give you answers. It really depends on the context. And so...
Can the conversational agent drive the conversation as well? Or does the human being have to drive the conversation? Well, meaning, you're right. Acting like I don't have to be here,
right.
That you could have a conversational agent hosting this show for public television, Fios and other platforms. Steve, we don't need you. You're gonna have a conversational agent sit right here and talk to the professor. Does it work that way?
I mean, no. The technology isn't sophisticated enough to work that way yet. Currently, it's mostly about responding to your questions.
I often think that I've used some voice technology around health and medical related questions. Growing area?
Yes, definitely.
Because?
Well, for example, we do a lot of searching on the internet for medical reasons, and sometimes, let's say right now you look it up on a website and it gives you information through a text. Voice would be exactly the same thing, but instead of giving it the information to you through text, it gives you it through voice. So it's not that much different than what we're already used to right now.
But stay on this though, the medical situation is fascinating to me. For those of you who've ever gone onto the internet to search for medical or clinical information, health-related information, I'm included. What's curious to me, doctor, is if you come, people often say, well, some physicians will say, don't do that, it's dangerous. People can decide for themselves. Can you have a situation where you ask a question of this conversational agent who's an expert, or the technology is programmed for this conversational, I'll get to the question, I promise, where you ask a question, you get something, and you need clarification, can you ask a follow-up to say, wait a minute, you just said this, I heard this before, what's accurate?
Well, there are limitations of the conversational agent. It's only as good as the intelligence of the system, and we're at a very, it's getting better, but it's still at a very low level.
Is it the early stages?
I would say that it's still at a very, very early stage. If you're talking to a conversational agent, right now, there's not a lot of interactions where you could actually have a meaningful philosophical conversation. So it's mostly geared at question and answers, and the reason why is because there are a huge repository of questions that we already know answers to, and so that way we have these databases that have all these kind of answers that
Sure.
are pre-made answers that the machine can deliver to you.
It's less social than it is informational.
It's right now it's not very social at all, but going into the future, if the technology becomes more sophisticated, we can imagine maybe some rudimentary conversations. And you see already a lot of that when you're answering, for example, like phone calls where they're like, press 1 to do
Yes.
this and 2 to do this. That's like a very low level,
Yes.
right? But you can imagine that getting a little
It
bit
could
better.
get more sophisticated.
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting. By the way, we are here at the Voice Summit at NJIT. Thousands of people have come here to Newark, New Jersey. This event is sponsored by Amazon Alexa. Our colleagues and friends in the higher education community, particularly here at NJIT, have brought these folks together here on campus. What is an event like this? With the folks who are here, the whole range of panel discussions, keynote speeches, all kinds of information being shared. What does it mean to an institution like NJIT for this event to be here?
I mean, I think the fact that it's in Newark and at NJIT is like very symbolic for our community. We have a very strong growing research presence here at NJIT. We have something called the 2020 Vision, which is investing a lot into research. And some of that research is in this voice technology. And when you think about voice technology, it's very complex because it's not just about like algorithms and computer science. There's also ethics related to what would be appropriate for the machine to
Quick
know.
example.
So let's say that you're talking to your device and you're asking it about certain health conditions.
My conversational agent.
Yes, a conversational agent, and you're talking about some kind of sensitive health information. Well, does that stop between you and the machine? No, because some of that data goes back to the company.
What about HIPAA, the federal government laws about what medical information can and cannot be shared by the clinicians involved?
Right. Well, that's about clinicians. So this is like a little bit of a different conversation because it's not about doctors sharing information. It's about you sharing your personal
But
information
I don't want
with the
anyone to
machine.
know, doctor.
Right, but then why are you talking to this agent? So usually when you're asking questions about certain
Sure.
medical situations, then the device knows that that's something that you're interested in. And right now...
Is that information protected in terms of privacy?
That's a good question, and that's like one of the discussions going on here is that to what extent are the companies going to save that information?
You are fascinating. Your
Thank
work
you.
is fascinating,
Thank you.
and this conference has so many interesting aspects to it, and we thank you. Dr. Yvette Wan, Assistant Professor of Informatics and Director of the Social Interaction Lab at NJIT. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Be right back right after this.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato at NJIT has been provided by the Northward Center, St. Joseph's Health, PSC&G, TD Bank, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and by MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.